2 adult children. Let us give a warm welcome for Rev Sara Stephen Nichols.
Good morning. Good evening, Reverend Suzanne Grace. It's always a pleasure to be here. And it's a pleasure to be in your new space where I didn't have to set up chairs this morning. The last 2 times I was thinking I got early enough that I was one of the chair setter-uppers. So you probably just have the chairs, and they're great, really comfortable. So that's exciting. As someone who formerly led a center in Davis, Center for Spiritual Living in Davis, for 5 years, Church in a Box. I can. That's fun. I could totally do. I'm not sure it would be that entertaining, but I could dance the whole time and be very happy. But yeah, I know what it's like to go back and forth with all the stuff, even with a great space like you had in the park. So, yay, you had a spot! Yay! And then also, I believe it was last time I was here, I made the mistake, I'm going to say, of using an example of my inner knowing and dialing into my inner knowing about how animals had started speaking to me. And then what happened was there was a long line of people who wanted to talk to me about their animals. And ever since then, I've had more and more animal contact, and now I've just embraced it. It's like apparently that's a thing. So it's not just an example of dialing into your own inner wisdom, but apparently animals and I communicate. And we had a little experience, Marianne and I. We had a field trip. We had an animal field trip, if it's okay for me to mention that. Okay, thank you. So here I am. And I'm wondering, my topic is Recognizing the Real You, which is the subtitle of my book, How to Know What You Know, Recognizing the Real You. And has anybody ever had something that they've been shown in their life, and some of us have been on the planet a while, in the body a while, that they've been shown to do and actually haven't yet brought it forth? Anybody raise your pinky if you've been shown to do something and you haven't done it yet, like write a book or create something or make something happen, or like you just keep being shown but you haven't done it. Well, that was me. For decades, it's still me. There are things that I'm shown to do that I haven't done yet. But for decades I was shown, you are going to write a book. And when I was a young lawyer in Washington, D.C., public interest advocate working for Public Citizen, I took tons and tons of notes, and then I, very soon after that, kind of vomited a book into a computer. A book is that's overly generous. It wasn't a book. It was just a whole bunch of words and stories and things. And then I never did anything with it. Anybody ever kind of like taken the first step and not done anything with it later? Yeah. And then because my specialty in advocacy was advocating for healthcare for all, I'm trying to get a national healthcare system, and I was one of the leaders of that in the early 90s in Washington, D.C. And I don't know if you noticed, there isn't one. I failed massively. And then this little subtext to show you how megalomaniacal I can be. I actually really blamed myself for quite a while for not having worked hard enough. that was why. Bill Clinton couldn't get his health care plan through the United States Congress in the early 90s. But I was supposed to be able to get this plan that would disrupt the entire for-profit healthcare industry through the United States Congress if I had just worked harder. So that's what it's like to be inside my head sometimes. But so I was advocating for healthcare for all. I did that in Washington. Then I did it once I moved to Sacramento. We moved to Sacramento with our 2 small children, back to California where I'm from, and I began advocating for that on behalf of some healthcare worker unions in the capital, and also you may notice that has failed at the state level as well. But I also at that time became, our son got very sick and was sick from age of 9 to age of 18. And so I started to interact with the healthcare system a great deal. And we went to everything from pediatric blankologists to shaman over the course of about a decade to heal him. Fast forward to the end of that story, he is healed, he is healthy, he is out in the world, 31 years old, supporting himself, having an amazing life. But during that time, I felt like a failure as a mother because because our son was in so much pain. And that's what brought me into Science of Mind, into the Center for Spiritual Awareness in West Sacramento. And I was using spiritual tools to address the emotional pain that I was in, to be able to, and also to figure out how to heal my son. And I more and more began to identify as a healer, but here I was, a healthcare advocate who hadn't succeeded at the healthcare system, and a healer who was not healing my son. I don't know if any of you have ever been shown something, and you're shown it and you're doing it, but it's not necessarily showing up the way you thought it would. So I vomited a book about all that, because I thought that was kind of interesting, right? Healthcare advocate, healer, sick kid, what it's like, and I never did anything with it. And by the way, I'm one of these people who started writing only on computers like decades ago, and basically don't even know how to write by hand. And you wouldn't want to, you couldn't read it. So never did anything with that. Then after class, became a practitioner, a Science of Mind practitioner, became a minister, went to Holmes Institute for 5.5 years on the long plan, the crock pot method of becoming a minister. I got into 12-step recovery for many, many things. And during that time, at some point, I heard a couple of guest speakers at Center for Spiritual Awareness that changed my life. I mean, Reverend Georgia Prescott, who was the founder and leader of that center, also changed my life many, many times. But so did these guest speakers, so pay attention if you ever have a guest speaker that says something that reaches you. So one of them was this woman who had written a book called Divine Discernment. No, it was called Divine Revelation. Why did I write that down, Sarah? Weird. Okay. And she told us about how she used her connection with Spirit every step of the way to create that book. Like, she used it to know, do I self-publish? Do I publish? What do I write in it? Which publisher do I use? Do I have an agent? Which agent? She would just put her finger down a list of things, and she learned to feel which one was right, which one was light, is what I'm going to tell you. That was hers to do. And that began to really work at me. And then there was another guy, maybe some of you have heard him too, Terry McBride, who wrote The Hell I Can't. And it was a book about how he healed himself from these terrible, terrible infections that had riddled his entire body as a young man, and made it so he was a young, vital man, and he now could not walk and could not operate. And the wisdom that he had there led me to heal, on the road to healing my entire body, but also to helping me heal our son by paying attention to just one very small thing. What's the best thing I believe? Well, I'll just tease that out for you right now, because in Science of Mind, oftentimes we do these really robust, powerful, kind of huge affirmations. You do these things, I am whole, I am well. I'm not at all well or whole, right? I'm just like, whatever it is, I'm in this horrible state, or I have advanced cancer, or whatever it is. And now I'm affirming the whole thing. And yes, by all means, go to practitioners, go to ministers, and have them affirm the whole thing. But if you're doing it yourself, or maybe even when you're asking for prayer, consider what's the very best thing you believe sometimes, and pray for that. So he didn't believe he could sit in a room and say, or have anybody sit in a room and say, I am whole, you are well, and just be well. But what he did believe was that there was a doctor who could help him, and that he could find that. So he started affirming that, and he found it. And then surgery by surgery, he had the infection cut out of his body. These were surgeries that he shouldn't have been able to afford, and shouldn't have been able to get the surgeon to do it. There almost no one in the world did these surgeries. But he believed, that's something I can do. I can get a person who no one in the world can get to do surgeries, and to do my surgery. And with one surgery at a time, the man ended up walking and being healthy and not having a colostomy bag, and being able to have sex, which was the main thing that he had been told he wouldn't be able to do, that was motivating all the healing. I was a young man. It's like, what? Colostomy bag, no sex? No, it's not going to be for me. Right? So I took away that little things are really important. The best thing you know is really important. It's really important to pay attention just to that next step. And that next step. I have watched people go from homeless to being on a list for public housing, for a housing center, and then being on the list for an apartment that's too big technically for what they're allowed to have, and then being on a list for it being even cheaper than they thought, to being moved into an amazing apartment in an amazing place, right? I've watched them boop, 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 their way to magnificence. And I've also watched people do the whole thing at once, but a lot of times it is boop, boop, boop. During ministerial school, I had crazy times where I was like, I was just straddling these wildly different worlds. I was in peace meditations with groups of ministers, and being peaceful. And then I would have to run over to the union that I worked for and be in the room that was literally called the war room, where people are screaming expletives all the time. I'm not going to treat you to that, but I could, of like what we were going to do to certain legislators if they didn't do what we wanted them to do, and blah, 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 right? And so just like, what? These totally wild worlds. I went on to lead the Center for Spiritual Living in Davis for 5 years, and that was a beautiful experience until it wasn't, until my spirit just showed me it was time to leave. And you've probably had times when you've been shown to leave something or someone or some city or whatever it is. I was shown to, even as a minister, I was shown to go back into work for the California legislature not too long ago, and had the opportunity to be chief counsel for a committee in the assembly with jurisdiction over arts and entertainment and sports. And I was fired for that committee, or pushed out. Technically, on paper, it wouldn't be called fired, but for reporting ethical concerns of my boss. And I had to do a lot of prayer and a lot of discernment and a lot of going within during that whole time to figure out what is mine to do. Do I say this? But I was trained. I was literally in ethical training after ethical training. If you see this, say this. If you see this, say this. So I did what I was trained to do, and then that led to me being fired. What's cool is that that gave me time. For several months, I was on paid leave, technically, and during that time, I was shown, you are really going to write this book. And then I had to be clear on what was the book. and the clarity of, and it's also cool, I was going to say, that because of all my spiritual work, and because I really do keep a very strong spiritual practice, which honestly comes less from science of mind training than it does for 12-step recovery. If I want to be able to maintain my 100-pound weight loss, if I want to be able to be a loving parent and wife and daughter and sister, I have to stay in constant contact with spirit. And so I do that every day. I meditate and pray every day. I write things I'm grateful for every day. And that meant, and I pull the weeds on my resentments every day. And so that meant that I was able to be fired, but without being resentful. You know, I was resentful at one time. I'm no longer resentful. I am sad. I'm sad for the people of California. I'm sad for the voters and the taxpayers that the leadership in the assembly thought it was more important to protect a, frankly, fairly incompetent person who was putting the whole institution at risk rather than, you know, do the right thing, right? It's not about me. It's not about me, and things don't always have to be about me anymore. Imagine that. Although I do like my giant, totally about me banner. And this is my signature book color. I only wear this color when I'm speaking. I got this at the Weave Thrift in Sacramento recently. I love the Weave Thrift in Sacramento. If you ever come down, go to that on art. And oh my God, they have the best things. Such great clothes and such a great mission. So with all these sponsees and all these sessions and all this healing that I did, sessions I got, sessions I gave, over and over and over again, people would ask me, well, Sarah, how do I know what I know? How do I dial into my internal wisdom? And I would teach them over and over again. And I wrote one blog post with like 14 different ways to know what you know. And then I started populating, that just listed them all, but then I started writing a separate post on each like way to know what you know and how to do that. And then I started thinking, that seems like it wants to be a book. And then I started thinking, well, I guess it is a book. But then I kept not writing the book. And then our daughter, Emily, who is 29 now, and a wonderful young woman, also supporting herself. I just love to brag that my kids are both supporting themselves. And happy, more importantly, and healthy. Emily said, Mom, you have to write that book. And I said, why do I have to write it? And she said, because when I have a problem, well, when my friends have problems, and my friends have great parents, they're blessed with great parents, but when they have problems and they go to their parents give them advice. And when I have a problem and I come to you, unless I ask for advice, you guide me to my own inner wisdom. And my friends don't know how to do that. And we need to. Because otherwise we're relying on Google or our parents, and none of us are in churches. We don't have rabbis or, imams giving us advice. We don't know who to go to. And we go down these internet rabbit holes, or we just do whatever our parents say. And not that parents' advice can't be good. But it's just that they're a separate person, right? Sorry, they're a separate person, and they have their own inner knowing. And she said, you need to write this book for me and my generation. I mean, I also thought it was for us, my generation. But she said yes. So I ended up praying. I had to pray, and I had to use all my tools to write this book every step of the way. Was I going to have a publisher? Was I not? Just like Susan Shumsky, who wrote Divine Revelation, I used my tools. I wasn't using her tools, although her tools are good, but my tools work better for me. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being shown that it was called How to Know What You Know. And I ended up being shown that I was not going to self-publish, that was not in alignment, that I would find a publisher. So I hired Dennis Merritt Jones, who some of you may have heard of, is also an author and minister, to coach me on how to get a publisher, and I got a publisher. And then in this genre, you just write a proposal to get a publisher. You don't write the whole book. So then I had to write the whole book. I had a contract, and it's like, well, that's great though, right? Because you have the book contracts, then you have to write the darn book. That was such a godsend for me. And so I ended up with 16 areas to practice these tools in. There's the tools, but there's 16 areas that we look at closely: health, sex, life's work, boundaries, creativity, integrity, caregiving, death, and others. So, do I need to wrap up right this minute? When do I need to wrap up?
Whatever you want.
Oh, that's okay. Say that to a minister. You'll get ugly.
7 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about health for a second, since I mentioned healing on so many things. Are we dancing again? So, what I would really love to invite to all of us in this room and anybody watching online or listening is in each of these chapters, there's an opportunity to actually take an inventory of what do you really know about yourself in this area, and what don't you know about yourself in this area. And then to begin to use a new tool, potentially. If that's an area where you're weak and you don't want to be weak, you can use that tool to strengthen what you know about yourself. And health is one of those areas that I really like to emphasize, partly for all the reasons given, but also because I was able to heal my body from so many extreme conditions by dialing into my own inner wisdom. And in fact, in my case, surgery, I had this terrible knee issue where I couldn't walk more than a block without extreme pain. And physical therapy didn't help me the first couple times around. Surgery didn't help me. I had the surgery and it didn't change it. And it ended up being deep Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations for an entire month every day that made it so I went from extreme pain in that knee to being able to walk miles and backpack again. Things like that have happened over and over again. I maintained a 50 or 60 pound weight loss for many, many years. Inner knowing and spiritual tools ended up showing me how to go the full 100 and how to keep it off and what that looks like. And it isn't just about, dieting or something, right? It's actually inner knowing. So a lot of people don't really allow themselves to be the expert on their own body. Don't actually trust themselves enough to know that they know as much about or more about their body. I know someone who knows a lot about her own body and trusts herself right there. But also we can we can know a lot about our body, but if we don't follow it or we don't trust it, then it doesn't really work. So part of it is connecting all that. So I'm going to teach you a tool called havingness that is in the book that I really love. Have any of you ever heard of havingness? It means that it's a gauge for the degree to which you are willing to have what you say you are willing to have. So if there's something in your body that you wanted to change or you want to change right now, you become present with that, like how you would like it to be in your body that it isn't yet. Whatever that is. It could be something fairly minor, or it could be something major if you're grappling with a major health crisis. And then picture a gauge out in front of you, kind of like a gas gauge on an outdated internal combustion engine, with empty or 0% willingness to have what you say you want to have on one side, and 100% willingness to have what you say you want to have on the other side. So to get that, the gauge is what percentage, you're going to see what percentage are you willing to have what you say you want to have in your body. So now just picture this out in front of you. If you're not a person who pictures, you can just feel it. But where does that gauge go? If you picture the way you would like your body to be, and it's not, where does it go? Are you 10% willing to have it? 100%? Somewhere in between? Anybody get on the low end of the havingness? Anybody get on the high end of the havingness? Anybody get somewhere in between? Yeah. So this is a good gauge, because especially if it's low, right? Because then it's kind of mystery solved. If I'm not actually willing to have what I say I want to have, I'm not going to have it. That's science of mind. I'm not willing to have it. But good news is you can actually use the gauge itself to move the needle, literally and figuratively. Well, I guess it's all literal, not figurative. But you can picture that gauge going towards 100%. And notice, and this is something more to do in a quiet space, maybe with a pen, notice what would have to be true. What do you have to let go of to get to 100%? What are you holding on to that keeps you from getting to 100% on that health element that you, or body element that you're willing to have? What thoughts, beliefs, opinions, conclusions are you willing to let go of? Or sometimes people find when they're on the low end, they just find, oh, I don't want to have it. Wait a minute. I can just stop beating up on myself for the idea of not having that, because I'm not willing to have it. There was a woman, she gave me permission in one talk in San Francisco that I gave, who we were doing it on, or she did it on life partner. She's wanted a life partner for a long time. She hasn't manifested a life partner. And then when she looked at it, it was 0%. And she said, she stood up in the service. I think we were passing a mic at that point, and she was just like, "Oh my God, I'm not willing to have a life partner. I don't want one. This is so great. Like, I don't have one, and I don't want one, dude." And so she just was like, she maintained contact with me and just kept telling me, my life is so much better now because I am not in this state of like, oh, I should have a life partner and I'm supposed to have a life partner and I don't. I don't want one. It's not convenient to me. It's not what I want. I am a happy single woman. And so that's on offer to you too. That's the kind of thing I like to see coming out of this book. And that's the kind of thing that's happening as people are engaging with the material. And I believe it's why Spirit had me write it. I don't know that I'm going to be a best-selling author, but I do know that Spirit wants this book out there so more people know what they know and dial into it. So that's it. I'll just plug a couple things. I'll be here afterwards with the book if you want to buy it, and I take all forms of payment that you can possibly imagine. But you can also get a card to buy it online if you prefer later when your bank account says it's better or whatever, right? I use these tools a lot in a world that works for everyone. I didn't talk about that as much today, but I would love, even if you don't want to buy the book, if you would register to come to Visioning to Heal America, to heal the soul of America. We're doing visioning meditations periodically. The next one is this coming Wednesday at 10 a.m. And we would love to have you. It's online on Zoom, and so you can, if your schedule allows you to do something at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday, you could come in. But also, if you join it, then you'll hear about the other visionings, which are at various times. And you, other thing like that?
Your blog.
No, yeah, I'd love for you to join my newsletter. Sacred activism practice. There's a sacred, Centers for Spiritual Living is doing a sacred activism workshop. The last, actually it's the 22nd of August on a Saturday in the morning on Zoom. We're teaching people how to use the tools of our teaching to know what's theirs to do in the world right now and to follow that. And it's a special training, and it's going to be very well done. And there are multiple centers in the country that are doing sacred activism, really grounding the activism in sacred truth. And so I would love for you to know about that and register for that so that we make sure that everybody knows it. And I would love it if it was announced. I believe it's 10 a.m. Saturday, August 22nd on Zoom, and I'm one of the servants of that. So now go use your havingness gauge. Well, actually, I'll teach you really quickly and then I'll pray out. Light versus heavy. Light is a yes, and it's light and expansive. And heavy is a no. Stuck. And I could talk about light and heavy a long time. And that was invented by Access Consciousness. And havingness was invented by the Berkeley Psychic Institute. I invent almost nothing. I just steal from other people, but I do give attribution. So go within, and either using the havingness or light or something else, and see, is it yours to have this book or learn more about how to know what you know, or to give it to someone else? Is there someone in your life that needs it? Just see if that's yours, if that's a yes. Feels light and expansive. Or to join sacred activism or visioning to heal America. I use these tools every day to figure out what I say yes to and what I don't. Or does it feel stuck and heavy and no, that's not for me. And pay attention to that. I want you to do what's yours to do. I'm here to support you in that. And you can also apply to have a session with me. I take applications because I do very few sessions, but if you on my card there, you can go online and apply for a session. And it can be an animal communication session. So let's take this message into prayer. I think I went over the 7 minutes, but she said no particular time, so everyone's going to forgive me. Just knowing that every single person in this room is a spiritual being having a spiritual experience in a human body on a human plane. And spirit is having a wonderful time being you, being us. It just loves being in our body, even regardless of how our body is. The good news and the bad news is spirit is just having a blast. Spirit loves it. And spirit loves to be in greater, more conscious communication with us. To be the guiding light in how we create our lives and our days and our bodies and our relationships. And so I speak my word for everyone in this room coming to, if they choose it and they wish to have it, a greater connection with that part of them that knows and knows that it knows. And being able to listen to it and follow it and also hand over the reins to it when appropriate. To give it all. And to be able to live a life that is more filled with clarity, focus, ease, and grace, and delight, and bringing forth what you are here to do. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. Thank you, Spirit. What else is possible? How does it get better than this? I know that it is good and very good and done and very done. And so I let go and I let God. And so it is.